Please join me in welcoming JPAC Vice Chair Susie Sorkin.
Good morning. I am honored to introduce Secretary Xavier Becerra, an accomplished public servant and a fellow Stanford alum. The Secretary often speaks with warmth and gratitude of his immigrant parents' sacrifices that helped propel him and his sisters to be the first college graduates in their family. These roots inspire him daily in his work to support and enhance the lives, education, health, and opportunities for all Californians and Americans, and especially those in the working class. We Californians are grateful for his service as our Attorney General from 2017 to 21, where he led efforts to protect Californians' privacy and consumer rights and hold large corporations and the opioid industry accountable. He defended both the Affordable Care Act and the DACA program for Dreamers all the way to the Supreme Court and won. From reproductive freedom to clean air and water, AG Becerra protected Californians from Trump administration attacks, suing the federal government over 100 times. Becerra's distinguished academic and public service career has culminated, thus far, in his work as Secretary of Health and Human Services. He served during a critical time in the Biden administration, helping to lead the country through the COVID pandemic. Under his leadership, Americans achieved the highest level of health care coverage in our history, with more than 300 million Americans possessing health care insurance. Xavier Becerra is married to Dr. Carolina Reyes, and together they have raised 3 daughters. For his family and for all California families, Secretary Becerra is a fearless advocate, safeguarding the fundamental right to health care, striving to preserve our environment for ourselves and posterity, and protecting immigrants. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Xavier Becerra.
Susie, thank you very much. David, to you as well, thank you for all the work that you've done. And to each and every one of you, go lobby and go hard and don't give in, because this is an important thing you are doing. So thank you for being here in Sacramento. I want to begin by first acknowledging the work that JPAC does. It is important to recognize that each and every one of you, especially those of you who are new, make a difference. Because you become the leaders, you become the advocates, you become the friends who the leaders here in Sacramento, the policymakers, will count on, and you should never shy away from standing up for the values that make you who you are. And so I encourage you, as I said, to go tough when you go and speak to those legislators today. Your work doesn't just strengthen the Jewish community, it strengthens all of California. Because when you fight for that justice, when you fight for the opportunities for new Americans to have that chance to go to college, you make it possible for California to succeed. And so we want to thank you for everything you are doing to really set in place that foundation for justice, for dignity, for compassion, and for safety that is so essential to everything we do as Californians. And those priorities, well, they're not just niche priorities. Those priorities are the foundation of a decent society. And right now, that foundation needs defending. We gather at a time when hate crimes are rising, when anti-Semitism is growing, more brazen, and when extremists feel emboldened, not ashamed, to put people's lives at risk with their rhetoric and with their policies. So let me be very, very clear today, because it is important as you go out to marshal your resources and speak to others to be clear as well. There is no place for anti-Semitism in California, not in our politics, Not in our politics, not in our classrooms, not in our communities. It must be safe to worship, to learn, to recreate, and certainly we must protect lawful expression. But threats, intimidation, or violence must not be tolerated. That's one of the reasons why I support the Nonprofit Security Grant Program, which I know you support as well. That's right, not as a symbolic gesture, but as a real, ongoing commitment to protect institutions that face very real, ongoing threats. So I come before you today in partnership. I come here with a record of building, protecting, executing, and I come here on a mission. My mission, simply put, is to reward work and sacrifice. If you put in a full day of work, you can aspire to own a home, educate your kids, and save enough for a peaceful retirement. That's my view. No worker should have to stop at a food pantry on the way home to make ends meet. You shouldn't have to worry if you can afford to take your child to the hospital. And you should be able to replace that aging washer and dryer when it's time. Just give a working family the tools to stay ahead of the bill collector, and they'll figure out the rest. That's what my parents, a construction worker and a clerical worker, my construction worker father with a 6th grade education, my mother coming to this country when she was 18 from Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, that's how they started their life here in America, and they made it work for all of their kids. That's what we want for every family. And actually, that's what America did back in the 1950s. After our troops returned from war, we put them to work. We gave them the GI Bill that allowed them to get educated or trained. The result was the largest middle class the world had ever seen. And that's what Governor Edmund G. Pat Brown did in the 1960s. He rewarded workers who built the infrastructure that made California the economic dynamo that today is the 4th largest economy in the world. Our universities, our transportation systems, our water networks. Thank you, Governor Brown. Today, our infrastructure priorities may be somewhat different, but addressing them with the same vigor will reward working Californians. Housing, energy, and technology, increasingly AI infrastructure, present the challenges that working Californians want us to tackle. And there's plenty of building or rebuilding that we could do with our education, our healthcare, agriculture, and entertainment infrastructure. There's work to be done, and we should reward those who do it. We must, and we will, build smarter and faster. It won't be easy, but take it from a CEO who has run 2 of the largest public enterprises in the world, the Department of Health and Human Services, with a budget that is twice the size of the Department of Defense. In fact, 5 times the size as the budget of the state of California, and the California Department of Justice. No other justice department in the world other than the U.S. Department of Justice, which is now AWOL, does more to protect the rights and civil liberties of Americans. We know how to do it. We just have to break away from the business as usual to get it done. When Americans were dying by the thousands every day from COVID, as Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, we had to deploy hundreds of millions of vaccines across the country. And we had to do it without charging any money for those who could not afford it. With some 700 million COVID vaccine shots in the arms of Americans, something we'd never accomplished before in the history of the United States, we pulled out of that worst pandemic in 100 years. As Secretary of HHS, We took America to the highest level of healthcare coverage ever, with more than 300 million Americans securing their own healthcare because we took the Affordable Care Act's marketplace coverage to places it had never been. When Donald Trump left office, it was under 12 million people who had their insurance through the private marketplace. By the time we left, there were more than 24.5 million Americans who had their coverage through the ACA. And defying the skeptics, we dropped the price of some of the most expensive prescription drugs in America, in some cases by up to 80% in the first ever drug negotiations against the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. And as Attorney General, we defended the ACA, as you heard Susie mention, all the way to the Supreme Court. No one expected us to win. But we took the case because to not take the case would have meant that California would have allowed Donald Trump to defend the Supreme Court, to defend the Affordable Care Act before the Supreme Court. We were not going to let that happen. And so when we intervened in the case, we ended up bringing along 23 other state attorneys general with us, and lo and behold, by a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act. And today there are 46 million Americans who have their health care because of the ACA in total. As Attorney General, I protected Californians over and over, and Susie, it was actually 122 lawsuits that I filed against the Trump administration the first time around, winning most of them. Build, protect, execute. It can be done. I did it, and I'll do it again with your help, together in partnership. And I'd like to close with a couple of final thoughts. When I visit communities across the state, I hear a very familiar worry that our politics are too broken, our systems too slow, our future too uncertain. But I don't believe in giving in. I believe in showing up. We don't get to choose the challenges of our time, but we do get to choose how we meet them. The Jewish community in California has answered that question time and time again, with action, with advocacy, with heart. I will answer that question as your governor by building, protecting, and executing. If we do those three things, then I believe that all we have to do is give working Americans in California that chance to work, and they'll take care of the rest. And so I want you to know, in me, you will always have a partner who will stand with you, who will fight alongside you, who will make sure that the values we share are not just spoken, but secured in policy, protected in law, and lived out across this state of California. Together, we can build, we can protect, we will execute, because together we will continue to have California rise to the heights that we need for those kids in the future who've never gone to college and are dreaming for the day that they can do that, and their parents are working hard to make sure it happens. Thank you for letting me come by today. Enjoy the rest of your lobbying efforts, and success to you always. Thank you very much.